So we can tell a lot of information from a graph. Some of the important information comes by looking at the title of the graph, as well as our x and our y axes of the graph. So from this specific graph, we can tell what the temperatures are in Port Hardy, BC on January 4th, 2010, during certain times of the day. So we can see here that for the first little bit, the temperature rose slightly, then it rose quite dramatically, and then it decreased from 12 and on. So again, there's some information here. It says it shows the temperatures increase from midnight to noon, and then from noon to 20, the line segments go down to the right. So that shows that the temperature decreased from noon to 8 p.m. And it also shows us the highest temperature on the graph was at 12 p.m. and it was 8 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that's some information that again, we can tell just by looking at this specific graph. So we're going to do the check together for this one. I'm going to take a look at this graph of Jody's height. Okay, so what does this graph show? Well, the graph shows Jody's height, as we just indicated. So they're looking for an age range here. So if you look at this first point, that's at 5 years old, all the way to the end, which is 20 years old. So it says what happened between 5 and 16 years of age. So what could we say about Jody's height during that time? We could say that Jody grew taller. And how do we know this? Well, we can see that the line goes up to the right. So again, if we look at her height between 5 and 16 years old, you'll notice again that the graph increases, so it goes up to the right. Now it says what happened between age 16 and 20 years old, so we're looking kind of between this range to this range. What could we say about Jody? You could say she stopped growing, or you could also say that she stayed the same height. And again, it asks us how we know this. We could say that the line stays the same or it stays constant. So about how tall is Jody? Again, if we look at kind of her maximum height here, she's about 170 centimeters tall. Okay, so we took all of that just from interpreting that very first graph. So if you flip over the 5.3 lesson on interpreting and sketching graphs, we'll follow through this together as well. So on the next graph, we're going to take a look at an example and try and figure out some answers to these questions. So the next one says each point on this graph represents a person. So if we take a look at this graph right here, each of those letters of the alphabet are, it's just focusing, are representing a person. So question A up at the top asked us which person has the greatest hourly wage. Sorry about that. It's just refocusing here. It's having a little bit of trouble focusing. All right. Okay, so which person had the greatest hourly wage? So again, if we look at the numbers on our graph and all the different people, we can take a look at which person had the highest hourly wage. Oh, that's person F. And person's F, their wage was $12. Okay, the next question asks which person has worked for the least number of years. So number of years worked is across the bottom. The person that worked the least amount would be person A. And they want to know how many years person A worked for. So again, they're between 0 and 2. Halfway between would be 1. So 1 year. The next question says which two people have the same hourly wage and what is this wage? So again, we're going to look at the hourly wages and we're looking to see which two people again have the same kind of point on the y-axis. Okay, so which two people have the same hourly wage? We'll notice, oh, B and D. Okay, so they have the same wage, and that wage is $10. And then the last question says, which two people have worked for the same number of years, and what is this number? So if we look at our number of years worked, again, we see that now we have C and D on the same level, and they have both worked for 3 years. So again, it's all about just reading the information within your graph, using the points on the graph as well as your title and your axes labels to look at the answers to those questions. Okay? So there's a check on the top of the next page. This is the top of page 270. You can either pause the video now or go back and do it once you're finished, but I would suggest doing that lesson, that check question on page 270. And again, you can use the answer key to check your own work once you've completed that. So again, let's take a look at another example here. So they've given us this graph. Okay, so we have our axes labels, we have our title, and from this graph, they've asked us to describe a possible situation for this graph. So a possible situation for what's been shown here. Now the answers are on the next page, so I'm not going to write them down, but I just want to verbally go through what's going on in this graph. So if we look from point A to point B, you'll notice that from point A to point B, our graph is going down to the right. Okay, so it's going down to the right. That means that the volume of the water in the bottle is decreasing over that point in time. So if we wanted to come up with a situation to explain what happened there, we could say that this person, Emiko, drank that 500 milliliters of water in 10 seconds. From point B to point C, you'll notice that the graph is going up to the right. So that means that the volume of the water in the bottle is increasing over this time. And the time period here, again, it's a little past that 5 mark. So I'd say it's about 6 seconds. So our scenario could be that Emiko took 6 seconds to fill the water bottle back up to the 100 milliliter mark. And then you'll notice for the last portion of the graph, it is a flat line. So the graph is horizontal. That means that the volume in the water bottle is staying the same. So during this time, Emiko is not drinking from the water bottle. That's the situation we could use to describe what's occurring in the graph. So if you flip over your page, you'll notice that the verbal description that we just went through explained what was happening in the graph. So again, at the bottom of the page, there is a check question. So I would suggest you try that check question now on your own. Again, you can either pause the video and head over to the check question, or you can kind of save that to the end. And this was a pretty quick lesson because there's lots for you to practice. So I'd like you to finish the rest of 5.3, try it on your own, see how it goes, and then once you've completed all the work, again, you can check your own work using the answer key that's been given to you. So just a reminder that this is formative assessment. This means this is assessment for your learning, and you will be checking your own work. I do not need you to submit this work to me. The summative assessment will be posted by the end of this week on these 3 topics, and have a great day.